The house was silent, until his mute son whispered a word he was never supposed to know. The Cyrus penthouse overlooked the city like a glass crown, silent, high above the noise of Chicago. Inside, that silence had become routine, expected, the kind of quiet that wraps around grief and stays. Bill Cyrus wasn't supposed to be home yet, but that evening, something pulled him back early. He stepped through the door, loosened his tie, and paused. The baby monitor gave its usual soft hiss. Monitors blinked. Machines hummed. Then a sound. Not a cry. Not static. A laugh. Bill's eyes darted to the living room, and time collapsed. There, framed by the twilight glow, his son, the child doctors said would never walk, never hear, never speak, was standing, wobbling, walking, arms outstretched, eyes wide, moving toward Tanya, the maid who'd spent the last 2 years holding him like he mattered. Tanya dropped to her knees, face wet with tears. Justin laughed again, fragile, raw, impossible. Bill's briefcase hit the floor. And just like that, everything he believed about his son broke open. How is he walking? Before we continue, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, so this story can reach someone who needs hope today. Chicago, 2 years earlier. The delivery room was too bright. Machines beeped. Nurses moved in hushed urgency. Then came the silence, the kind that leaves no space for joy. Justin entered the world without a cry. Bill stood frozen, helpless, as the doctors worked on both of them, his wife and his newborn son. He didn't know which life he was praying harder for. He lost her anyway. They told him it was a rare complication, an undetected embolism. One moment she was pushing, glowing, excited. The next, gone. And their son, born blue, limp, not breathing. Permanent damage, the neurologist said weeks later. No hearing. Likely paralyzed. The brain didn't get enough oxygen. Bill barely heard the rest. He nodded, signed papers, and disappeared behind appointments, bills, and a grief so vast it silenced even God. He moved into the penthouse for the quiet. It was easier than the old house, where his wife's laughter still haunted the walls. The Cyrus home became a cathedral of silence. No TV, no toys, no music, just the cold hum of air purifiers and feeding pumps. He tried. Specialists, stem cell therapy, acupuncture, diets, clinics out of state. Nothing changed. Justin stared blankly at ceilings and flinched at touch. So Bill built walls around the apartment, around his heart. He convinced himself love was dangerous. Dangerous to give, devastating to lose. Then Tanya showed up. 6 weeks ago. A quiet woman from South Side Chicago, mid-40s. Came recommended for deep cleaning after the night nurse quit. Bill didn't expect her to stay. She didn't speak much, just nodded politely and got to work. But there was something different about her. She moved like someone who had seen pain and didn't run from it. She hummed hymns while folding laundry, whispered scripture as she wiped down counters. She smiled at Justin every time she passed him, as if he could see her soul. He watched from the hallway one morning, not meaning to, as she dusted around the crib. Justin didn't flinch. Instead, he turned toward her. Over the weeks, the nurses noted something strange. Justin calmed when Tanya entered the room. He responded to her voice, not through sound, but vibration. He'd track her movements with his eyes, the twitch of a finger, the soft tremble of her prayerful humming through the floorboards. Bill dismissed it. Coincidence. Wishful thinking. But now, standing in the middle of his silent penthouse, he couldn't ignore it any longer. His son had taken steps toward her, toward Tanya, and now it hit him like a train. Every quiet laugh, every soft moment, Every flicker of change. Tanya was there, at the center of it all. Bill sank to his knees, not in despair this time, but in awe. God, what have I missed? Bill didn't move at first. He just stood there, watching Tanya cradle his son like it was the most natural thing in the world. Justin laughed again, soft, like a balloon losing air, and buried his face in her neck. Bill finally spoke, voice low but sharp with urgency. How did you make him move? Tanya looked up slowly. Mr. Cyrus, no, please. Just tell me. His eyes flicked to his son. How did he walk? How did he hear you? How is he laughing? Tanya sighed, gently rocking Justin as she stood to her feet. He doesn't hear me, not really. He feels me. Bill blinked. Feels you? She nodded, patting Justin's back. Through the floor. Through my chest when I hold him. Through my hands. Sound is more than noise. It's movement. Vibration. I started tapping rhythms. Humming hymns. Little patterns he could catch with his body, not his ears. Bill's breath caught. Why didn't you tell me? I wasn't sure it would work, she said. And honestly, he wouldn't respond to anyone at first. But then, he started reacting when I smiled. So I smiled more. I tapped. He tapped back. I hummed. He'd touch my throat. Feel the vibrations. She sat on the rug, legs crossed, cradling Justin like a prayer. He tries the hardest when he feels safe, when he feels loved. Bill swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing against years of grief. You're saying my son has been in there this whole time, awake, waiting. Tanya looked up at him. Yes, sir. Just waiting for someone to believe he could be more than his diagnosis. Bill dropped to his knees beside them, desperate now. He reached out slowly. Justin, it's Daddy. Justin turned his face slightly, then froze. Bill's voice cracked. Buddy, it's me. But Justin went still, like a statue, his little eyes dulling again. The light was gone. Bill's hands dropped to his lap. Why won't he look at me? Tanya reached out gently. He doesn't know you. Not the way he knows me. I've been here. Close. Every day. A bitter grief twisted in Bill's gut. I wasn't. He looked at his son, the miracle he'd been too afraid to love. I'm his father, he whispered. Why doesn't he feel safe with me? Tanya paused, then spoke gently, like a mother telling truth to a child. Maybe because you haven't let him feel you yet. Bill blinked, confused. Your voice, your love, your spirit, they're still locked away, Mr. Cyrus. You can't expect him to feel what you haven't given. Bill's chest tightened. The silence he'd built to survive his wife's death had become his son's prison. He turned his eyes toward the ceiling, eyes burning. God, help me show him I'm here now. Justin stirred slightly in Tanya's arms. A twitch, a flicker of recognition, but then stilled again. Bill looked at her, desperate. Tanya, why does he only respond to you? Rain tapped softly against the penthouse windows. Bill stood just outside the nursery door, half hidden in the hallway's shadow. The overhead light was dim, casting a warm glow over Tanya's shoulders as she rocked Justin back and forth. Then he heard it, the melody. Faint, gentle, familiar. His breath caught in his throat. It was her song. The lullaby Claire had hummed during late nights when she thought he wasn't listening. In the kitchen, on the porch, in the hospital, hand resting on her swollen belly. Tanya was humming it perfectly. Bill stepped inside, his voice low but sharp with disbelief. Where did you learn that? Tanya didn't flinch. She looked up slowly, still swaying. It comforts him. He moved closer, his heart pounding. That's not just any song. Claire made that up. She used to sing it when she was pregnant. She never wrote it down. Tanya paused. She did. Sort of. She reached for the bookshelf beside the crib and pulled out a faded, half-empty baby book. I found this tucked under a stack of linens in the back closet. It was dusty, like no one had touched it since before. Bill took it from her hands carefully. Inside, on a torn, yellowed page, in soft purple ink, was Claire's handwriting. For our baby boy, may this song hold you when I can't. And beneath it, the simple lyrics. Sleep now, my little light, though the world is dark tonight. Mommy's near, don't be afraid. God will hold you when I fade. Bill sat down on the rocking chair like the air had left his lungs. He traced the edge of the torn page with his thumb. She wrote this for him. Tanya nodded. I wasn't sure if it was okay, but I felt like he needed her voice. Somehow, Bill looked up at Justin, now sitting upright in Tanya's lap, eyes wide and blinking. Then it happened. Justin placed both palms on her chest, feeling the vibrations as she hummed the tune again. His little legs pushed against the floor, clumsy but determined. Justin, Bill whispered. Justin turned toward him, slowly, like recognizing something buried deep. A tiny, broken sound escaped his lips. Not a word, not yet, but something alive. Then, for the first time, he reached toward Bill. Bill didn't move, couldn't breathe. Tanya gently placed Justin on the soft rug, and he shuffled, wobbling, dragging, half-crawling, half-standing, toward his father. He stopped just in front of him, and with trembling fingers, Justin reached up and touched Bill's face. Warm, curious, soft. Bill clenched his jaw, his eyes stinging. He wouldn't cry. Not now. Not in front of Tanya. Not in front of his son. But something broke inside him anyway. Not from grief. From awe. For the first time ever. Justin touched him, and didn't pull away. The storm rolled in fast. Chicago's skyline vanished behind curtains of snow and wind. Street lights flickered. The high-rise groaned against the icy blast, and then everything went dark. The power cut with a pop and a hum. Silence swallowed the penthouse. Then came the thunder. Low, violent, rattling the floorboards. Justin's body stiffened in Tanya's arms. He whimpered, a sound filled with raw, primal fear. No, no, baby, Tanya whispered, holding him close. She dropped to the nursery floor, wrapping him in her arms like a shield. It's okay. Listen with your hands. Baby, feel my heart. She guided his tiny palm to her chest. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. Her heart beat, strong, steady, rising through skin and bone like an anchor in the dark. Justin's fingers twitched. Tap, tap, tap. He began mimicking her rhythm. His breathing slowed. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, they created peace. And then, in the hush between two cracks of thunder, a whisper. Taya. Bill stood in the doorway, barely breathing. He stepped forward slowly, like the floor itself was holy ground. Tanya, he breathed. Did he just? Tears welled in her eyes. He said my name. Justin looked up, face calm now, but searching. Bill lowered himself beside them and gently reached for his son. Hey, buddy, his voice broke. Can I show you something? He took Justin's small hand and placed it over his own heart. Right here. Feel daddy. Thump, thump. Justin's head tilted. Thump, thump. Then he tapped back. One beat. Then another. Bill bit his lip, tears blurring his vision. That's it, that's me. I'm here, Justin. The boy stared at his father, still and quiet. Then, in the dark, it wasn't clear. It wasn't perfect, but it shattered Bill's world anyway. He pulled Justin into his arms, cradling him like something long lost and finally found. I'm here, son. I'm right here. Bill wept openly, no longer hiding. Years of silence cracked wide open. He rocked his boy, forehead pressed to Justin's. "I should have held you like this every night," he whispered. "I should have believed." Tanya turned away, giving them space, her own tears silent and sacred. The wind howled outside, battering glass and steel, but inside the Cyrus home, there was warmth, love, a pulse that filled the room. For the first time since Claire's death, Bill felt alive again, not because his son had spoken, but because Justin had seen him. Through the dark, through fear, through touch and trust and trembling faith. And in that moment, father and son rediscovered each other, not through words, but through love that vibrated louder than any storm. The storm had passed by morning, leaving a frozen hush over Chicago. Icicles clung to the window panes. The skyline glittered like glass. Inside the nursery, light broke gently through the blinds, casting soft stripes over Justin as he slept curled on a blanket, his tiny hand still resting over Bill's heartbeat. Bill hadn't moved in hours. He couldn't. Not after the night they'd shared. His son had spoken, had seen him, had reached for him. And now, peace lingered that he hadn't felt in years. When Tanya brought in a warm bottle and a folded quilt, Bill gave a tired smile. "Thank you," he whispered. She nodded but didn't speak. Some moments didn't need words. After she stepped out, Bill turned toward the shelf and pulled out the old keepsake box Tanya had found the lullaby page in. He hadn't opened it since Claire's funeral. Inside were hospital bracelets, a sonogram photo, a dried flower from her bedside. Then, at the very bottom, tucked beneath the tissue paper, an envelope. His name was written in Claire's handwriting. His breath caught. The seal had been broken, but the letter inside was still neatly folded. A faint scent of her perfume clung to the paper like memory. He unfolded it slowly. "Bill, if anything ever happens to me, don't lose yourself. And please, please, make sure Justin knows love has a rhythm his body will understand. Not everyone hears through ears, but every soul recognizes love when it's steady, patient, real. Sing to him. Hold him. Let him feel your heartbeat. God will guide the rest. All my love, Claire." Bill's hands trembled. She knew. Somehow, before the tests, before the diagnoses, before the grief swallowed them whole, Claire had known their son would need more than medicine. She believed love would reach him first, and Tanya had unknowingly fulfilled that prophecy. Tears slipped down his face as he stood and walked to the kitchen. Tanya was rinsing dishes, her back to him. "Hey," he said softly. She turned, startled by the emotion in his voice. He held out the letter. "It's from Claire." Tanya took it carefully, eyes scanning the page. She read it once, then again. By the third time, her hand was shaking. Tears rolled freely down her cheeks. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know she'd written this." Bill stepped closer. "But you did everything she asked anyway." Tanya nodded, eyes glassy. "I had a younger brother growing up. He had cerebral palsy. Couldn't talk, couldn't walk. But when I hummed, he'd smile. I guess. I just hoped Justin would feel the same comfort." For a long moment, they stood there in the quiet, the hum of the fridge the only sound between them. Bill looked at her, really looked. "You saved my son," he whispered. Tanya pressed the letter to her chest. "No," she said softly. "He just needed someone to believe love could still reach him." It started with a whisper. A former nurse had mentioned it to a friend with a cousin at a private clinic. Within days, a neurologist called Bill's office requesting access to review the child's case. By the end of the week, 2 sharply dressed specialists showed up at the penthouse with clipboards, credentials, and carefully rehearsed smiles. "We've never seen a patient with this profile show neurological reversal without surgical intervention," one of them said. "We believe Justin should be admitted full-time for observation." the other added. With your consent, of course. Tanya stiffened behind them, arms crossed. Bill didn't answer at first. He stood beside Justin, who was sitting peacefully on the floor, tapping his fingers in time with the music Tanya had softly playing in the background, an old gospel song humming through the speaker. Justin's progress isn't a miracle of medicine, Tanya said quietly. It's a miracle of connection, of love. The doctors exchanged polite smirks. With respect, one said, emotional progress doesn't explain restored motor function. We need to understand how. You don't need anything, Bill snapped. He's not a lab rat. He's my son. One of the doctors pushed again. Mr. Cyrus, if you truly want to help children like Justin, this could be bigger than your personal beliefs. He belongs under professional care. Your kind of care is what kept him from smiling for 2 years, Tanya said, stepping forward. He didn't need another diagnosis. He needed to be seen. Ms. Robinson, we understand you're emotionally invested, but this is a clinical matter. Justin stirred. In the middle of their arguing, he stood, wobbly but with purpose. Then he took 1 step. 2. 3. Justin, Bill whispered, eyes wide. 4. 5. And then 6, straight into Bill's open arms. Everyone went silent. Bill dropped to his knees, holding his son tightly as the doctors stared, stunned. I've made my decision, Bill said, without looking up. He stays here. With her. With us. One of the doctors blinked. You're serious? You're rejecting full-time care. Bill looked up, eyes full of fire. I'm rejecting anyone who treats my son like data. God already gave us the treatment he needed, and it didn't come from a clipboard. He stood, holding Justin to his chest. I want every staff member who questioned Tanya's presence fired. Today, Tanya's eyes widened. Mr. Cyrus. Bill turned to her. No, you've done more for him in 6 weeks than they did in 2 years. I didn't see it before, but I do now. Tanya looked down at Justin, who was still tapping her rhythm faintly against Bill's chest. She smiled through tears. The house was no longer quiet, not in the way it used to be. Now it breathed with new rhythms, light footsteps on the hardwood floors, soft gospel music playing in the background, Tanya's voice humming while she chopped fruit in the kitchen, and Justin's laughter, fragile and perfect, but real. Bill stood in the living room, watching his son toddle across the rug with outstretched arms, his balance improving by the day. Tanya knelt nearby, clapping gently. That's right, baby. You're walking with purpose now. Justin grinned, his hand forming a rough sign for more. Bill blinked. Was that? Yeah. Tanya smiled. He's starting to sign. Bill sat on the couch, heart full. He looked at Tanya for a long moment, then said, I want to ask you something. She raised a brow, wiping her hands on a dish towel. I want you to stay, he said. Not just as help, not as a cleaner, not even as just his caregiver. She stood still. I want you to be part of our family, Bill continued. I want you to be his full-time guardian, his emotional therapist, his guide, whatever title makes it real. But more than that, I want you in his life, in our life, permanently. Tanya's lip trembled. Mr. Cyrus, he stepped closer. No one has ever seen him the way you do. Not even me. But I want to. And I want him to grow up with someone who teaches him love isn't just a feeling. It's an action. A rhythm. Like you said. She pressed a hand over her mouth. I don't know what to say. Say yes, he whispered. Please. Tanya nodded slowly, then smiled. Yes. They both turned toward Justin, now standing proudly by the window, mimicking the sign for happy with tiny clumsy hands. And he was, for the first time in his short, quiet life, Justin was happy. Days passed like pages in a story being rewritten. Tanya moved into the guest suite down the hall. Therapists were replaced with intentional routines, rhythm games, and story times. Justin began mimicking vowel sounds, learning new signs, stringing together gestures and syllables like pearls on a thread. The penthouse, once a monument to grief, now echoed with laughter. At breakfast one morning, Tanya poured orange juice while Bill read a picture book aloud. Justin tugged at his pant leg. "Hold on, buddy," Bill said gently, eye still on the page. But Justin tugged again, firmer this time. Bill looked down. Justin looked up, grinning. The word wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. It was whole. Bill dropped the book and scooped Justin into his arms, holding him like a man who'd been starved of joy and finally tasted it again. He buried his face in Justin's hair, tears falling freely. "Daddy's here," he whispered. "I'm here, son. I'm here." Spring came slowly to Chicago that year, but when it arrived, the whole world outside the Cyrus penthouse seemed to thaw. So did Justin. He walked now short, wobbly distances between the living room couch and Tanya's outstretched arms. Sometimes he held onto the wall. Other times he walked by feel, tracking vibrations through his feet, laughter in the air, love in the room. Words were still hard, but they came, one at a time. "Didi," he'd say each morning, tugging on Bill's pajama sleeve. "Maya," he'd call out when Tanya entered the room, his own name for her, stitched from Mama and Tanya. And he signed. He tapped. He touched. He connected. Love had taught him a new language. Hearing specialists confirmed what Tanya had always suspected. Justin wasn't hearing in the traditional sense, but his brain had learned to listen through vibration, through rhythm, through the things medicine could never quite measure. That's when Bill made the decision. He sold off part of his business portfolio and funded a therapy center on the West Side, naming it the Claire Center for Rhythmic and Emotional Development. It focused not just on physical needs, but spiritual and emotional healing, the kind that starts in the soul and spreads outward. He made Tanya its first director. Her pilot program, a revolutionary childcare approach using vibration, touch, and emotional rhythm, filled every available slot within weeks. Parents cried in her office. Kids who had never smiled now clapped to the beat of her voice. As for Justin, he became the center of it all, not as a symbol, but as a child, a boy with a story, a boy who once lived in silence, now dancing in soundless joy. One evening, as golden light spilled through the windows, Bill sat on the floor while Justin nestled against his chest, tapping a soft rhythm. Tanya folded laundry nearby, humming, and Bill simply breathed it in. Peace, hope, love. He looked at Justin's tiny hand, pressed over his heartbeat, and he thought of Claire. "You were right," he whispered silently. "He doesn't need to hear the world to know he's loved. He just needs to feel it every day. Because sometimes miracles don't come from medicine, technology, or money. Sometimes they come from the hands of someone who refuses to give up, someone who loves with a rhythm the heart can feel, even when the ears can't. And that is how a millionaire, broken by grief, and a maid from the South Side rewrote the destiny of a child the world had given up on, through love that could be felt even in silence."
If this story moved your heart, like, share, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And remember, God still sends miracles through the hands of ordinary people who love without giving up.